When he suddenly pulls away, your heart doesn't just break, it dissolves into 1,000 silent questions. The texts slow down. The calls feel shorter. That warmth in his eyes, it's replaced by something distant. And you're left asking yourself, was any of it real? But what if his silence isn't rejection at all? What if, in a strange twist, it's because what he feels for you is too real? So real that it wakes up something ancient, something terrifying deep. Within him, Carl Jung, one of the most influential minds in psychology, uncovered a startling truth. The more deeply a man loves, the more fiercely his unconscious mind can fight against that love. Not because he doesn't care, but because the intensity of what he feels threatens everything he believes about himself. In this video, we're going to explore that paradox through the lens of Jungian psychology. We'll unpack why the same man who once looked at you like you were his entire world can vanish like a ghost. We'll go deeper beneath the behavior, into the unconscious patterns that few men are ever taught to recognize, much less navigate. This isn't just about understanding him. It's about reclaiming your power. Because his withdrawal isn't about your worth, it's about the internal storm your connection stirred inside him. And once you see the deeper truth, everything changes. This journey is about uncovering how two people, two souls can meet, not in fantasy or fear, but in authenticity. Beyond projections, beyond defenses, beyond the shadow. If you've ever felt that emotional whiplash, the sweetness of connection one moment and radio silence the next, then stay with me, because this isn't about what you did wrong. It's about the deep psychological territory that love inevitably demands we walk through. Let's start with the foundation. Carl Jung's analytical psychology gives us a powerful framework for understanding what's really happening in romantic relationships. Unlike Freud, who mostly focused on sexual drives, Jung saw people as driven by a rich inner world, by archetypes, unconscious forces, personal and collective memories, and above all, by a drive toward individuation, becoming whole. These forces lie beneath our awareness, yet they shape our lives, especially when we fall in love. To Jung, the human psyche is not just a collection of memories. It's a living system constantly trying to balance our conscious thoughts with the unconscious forces beneath the surface. When we fall in love, that balance gets shaken. And that's when the unconscious wakes up. Suddenly, buried parts of us, emotions, beliefs, fears begin to rise. When a man connects deeply with a woman, this connection often wakes up parts of himself he's denied, ignored, or buried for years. That depth of feeling, it's not always blissful. It can feel overwhelming, like a psychological earthquake. And that can lead to what Jung called a psychological crisis, a kind of inner chaos that, while necessary for growth, often feels unbearable in the moment. This crisis looks different for everyone, but common signs include pulling away suddenly, feeling numb or emotionally flat, becoming irritable or overly critical, looking for flaws where before there was nothing but admiration. These aren't conscious choices. They're automatic defense mechanisms. His ego, his conscious identity, is trying to protect itself from the tidal wave of emotion that deep love brings. It's not that he doesn't care. It's that caring this much has set off something inside that he doesn't know how to handle. And that's where understanding Jung's concept of the anima becomes critical. The anima is the inner feminine aspect that exists within every man. This isn't just poetic, it's a psychological truth. The anima is formed early in life, based on his relationship with his mother and other key female figures. Over time, it becomes an unconscious blueprint of what femininity means to him emotionally, spiritually, and relationally. But here's the twist. Most men are raised to reject their inner feminine, to value logic over emotion, independence over connection, control over vulnerability. So, instead of embracing their anima, they project it outward onto the women they fall for. So when a man falls in love, he's not just falling for you. He's encountering himself, his own inner feminine, through you. And that experience is electric. It's what makes new love feel magical. In your presence, he connects with emotional depths he's long ignored. Through you, he feels intuition, softness, connection to soul. But this is where things get complicated. When he projects his anima onto you, he's placing something sacred, his own soul image, in your hands. And that creates intense emotional dependency. He may not realize it consciously, but suddenly, He needs you in ways that threaten his identity. The part of him that was raised to be strong, independent, in control, now finds himself overwhelmed by need, fear, longing. That creates internal conflict. One part of him craves this love. Another part of him is conditioned. Ego feels like it's drowning. And so, he pulls away. It's not about you. It's about what you represent. The love he feels for you has stirred something primal, something he's never had to face. And unless he's done serious inner work, he has no tools to make sense of it. So he runs. And this brings us to another powerful Jungian concept, the shadow. The shadow is everything we've denied, rejected, or buried in ourselves, qualities that don't fit with who we think we should be. For many men, the shadow includes emotions they were taught to hide, vulnerability, insecurity, emotional need, fear of abandonment. From a young age, boys are told not to cry, not to need, not to depend. So all of those feelings go underground. They don't disappear, they become shadow material. And when a man falls deeply in love, the walls protecting that shadow begin to crack. Suddenly, he's feeling things he can't explain, terrified of losing you, overwhelmed by emotions he's never faced, questioning his worth, struggling to control feelings that don't fit his self-imagined here. That's the critical part. If he hasn't learned how to face his shadow, his instinct will be to flee, to withdraw, to distance himself from the relationship that brought all of this to the surface. It's not about you. It's about the inner war that love has triggered inside him. Now, that doesn't mean you're powerless. In fact, understanding this dynamic can help you respond with wisdom rather than woundedness. It allows you to see his retreat not as a judgment of your value, but as a sign that your presence awakens something profound in him. And here's where the real power lies. Jung believed that intimate relationships were transformative precisely because they stir up the unconscious. They activate our shadow, our projections, our buried wounds, and in doing so, they create the potential for healing. But healing isn't automatic. It requires awareness, courage, and responsibility. At the core of this transformation is what Jung called the hero's journey, an archetypal path we see in myths, legends, and across human history. It's the story of a person being called into the unknown, facing their darkness, and returning transformed. When a man withdraws after experiencing deep emotional connection, he may unknowingly be stepping into this very journey. His silence isn't just avoidance, it can be the first step of an unconscious descent into his inner world. Just like the mythic hero must descend into the underworld before he can rise again, a man in love may first have to face his own shadows, fears, and buried truths that can look like distance, silence, emotional coldness. But underneath, something powerful might be happening. This withdrawal, when viewed through a psychological lens, could be his way of processing emotions he's never allowed himself to feel. A confrontation with old wounds, maybe from childhood, maybe from past relationships, a reckoning with the clash between vulnerability and the masculine ideals he was taught, a painful integration of all the qualities he projected onto you, qualities that are actually within him, a deep fear of losing control, of becoming too dependent, too open, too seen. But let's be honest, just because this inner journey might be happening doesn't mean it always leads somewhere healthy. Without self-awareness and psychological tools, many men get stuck here. They enter this cycle of emotional connection followed by retreat, over and over. They never complete the journey, they just loop it. So where does that leave you? You can't fix his inner conflict. You can't pull him through his underworld. That's his path to walk. But what you can do, what you must do, is take care of your own emotional well-being while holding space for truth. That starts with not taking his withdrawal personally. When someone pulls away, our first instinct is often fear. We want to close in, reach out, chase, fix. We blame ourselves. Was I too much, not enough? Did I scare him off? These reactions come from our own wounds, our own shadow. And Jung's path, what he called individuation, demands that we turn inward, that we face not just the other person's shadow, but our own. This is where the concept of the awakened woman comes in. An awakened woman doesn't respond to a man's withdrawal with panic or self-abandonment. She doesn't collapse into insecurity or chase his validation. She stays grounded in herself, present, honest, soft, but strong. She asks, What part of me is being triggered by his silence? Am I projecting an old wound onto this man like a father? Wound or past abandonment? Am I using his affection to fill a void I haven't yet faced on my own? And here's the truth, most of us have. We've all had moments where we handed our worth to someone else hoping they'd hold it for us. But the real work, the work of awakening, is reclaiming that worth. Not because we're unfeeling, not because his withdrawal doesn't hurt, but because we understand that true love doesn't come from clinging or fixing. It comes from wholeness, from the people owning their shadows, their projections, their wounds, and doing the inner work to become conscious. Now, let's go deeper into your power in this dynamic. When you respond to his disappearance with presence rather than panic, something shifts. You stop making it about your value and instead recognize it for what it is, his process, not your failure, not your flaw. This shift might not bring him back. In fact, it might confirm that he's not ready for what you're offering. And that, too, is clarity. But more often than not, something in your groundedness will startle him. He's used to women who either chase him or reject him when he pulls away. But when you remain calm, compassionate, and rooted in your own self-worth while still honoring your needs, that changes the energy. You're not waiting. You're not punishing. You're not abandoning yourself to keep someone else close. You're simply staying true to your path. This can be confronting for a man. It mirrors back to him what real connection looks like. Not projection, not fantasy, not codependence, but presence. And if he's on his own journey towards psychological growth, your centeredness may become a powerful mirror. But again, that's his journey. You are not responsible for carrying both your wounds and his. Your responsibility is to yourself, to your inner work, to your boundaries, to your heart. So how do you navigate this when you're in the thick of it? Start by asking better questions. What is this triggering in me? What fear is rising right now? What stories am I telling myself about his silence? What emotional needs have I neglected in myself while waiting on him to meet them? These aren't comfortable questions, but they're powerful, because every heartbreak is also a mirror. It shows us the places where we still abandon ourselves, still cling to fantasy, still seek outside what we must build within. Carl Jung believed that intimate relationships are the fast track to personal growth because nothing exposes our unconscious material faster. Through love, we come face to face with every hidden wound, every buried fear, every forgotten part of ourselves. But the goal of individuation isn't just to get the guy back. It's to return to yourself. It's to see clearly, to feel fully, to integrate all the parts of you, especially the ones that get stirred up by love and loss. This doesn't mean you should stay in a relationship that hurts you. Boundaries matter. But it does mean that instead of spiraling into self-blame or hopelessness, you can view his withdrawal as a chance to deepen your own growth. This perspective is liberating. It means you don't have to fix him. You don't have to prove your worth. You don't have to make sense of his chaos. You just have to stay connected to your truth. Because here's what no one tells you. Emotional sovereignty is magnetic. A woman who is rooted in herself, who doesn't chase or collapse or punishes a force. Not because she's cold, but because she knows that love doesn't require her to abandon herself. And sometimes, when you stop orbiting around someone else's emotional storm, they notice. Sometimes, they find the courage to face what's inside them, to meet you where you are. But even if they don't, you still win, because you didn't lose you. In part 3, we're going to go even deeper. We'll explore how conscious relationships are built not from fantasy or chemistry, but from mutual commitment to integration. We'll talk about what happens when both partners do the shadow work, and what it really means to love someone beyond projection. So let's talk about what happens when the people are ready, when they both choose growth over comfort, when they stop projecting and start seeing each other clearly. This is the space where conscious relationships are born. Most relationships start with projection. We see in the other person what we haven't yet found in ourselves: beauty, strength, emotional depth, mystery, purpose. It's intoxicating, and it's necessary. Jung said projection is part of falling in love. It pulls us into connection, but it's not meant to last, because love isn't about finding someone to complete us. It's about discovering the places within us that long to be whole. When a man withdraws after falling in love, he's often not running from you, but from the image of himself he saw reflected in you. The anima projection, the shadow that got stirred up, the feelings he wasn't ready to face. The truth is, most of what we feel in early love isn't about the other person. It's about what they awaken in us. But there comes a moment when the projection fades, the glow dims, the fantasy breaks, and this is where many relationships fall apart, because suddenly, we're not looking at a dream, we're looking at a real human being with flaws, fears, wounds. This is the moment of truth. For love to survive this phase, both partners must do the inner work. They must be willing to reclaim their projections, to face their shadows, to stop blaming and start owning their responses, to stop asking the other person to carry their emotional past. For the man, this means recognizing when he's projecting his anima, his inner feminine, onto his partner, doing the work to reclaim that part of himself, his emotional sensitivity, his intuition, his vulnerability, facing his shadow, the repressed fears and insecurities that love often brings to the surface. Developing emotional literacy, learning how to name, feel, and express what's happening inside, taking full responsibility for his patterns, his reactions, and his healing. For the woman, it means holding her own center, staying grounded, even when his process is chaotic, examining her own projections. Is she idealizing him? Is she hoping he'll rescue or validate her? Setting clear boundaries, not from punishment, but from self-respect, recognizing when she's over-functioning, trying to carry the emotional weight for two, choosing relationships that support mutual growth rather than repeating the same old pain. When both people walk this path, something extraordinary happens. They stop trying to be perfect. They stop expecting perfection. They start telling the truth, not just the pleasant truth, but the hard truth. I'm scared. I feel abandoned. I'm triggered. This reminds me of an old wound. And instead of running from that discomfort, they stay. They breathe. They listen. They learn. This is the beginning of real intimacy. That not the high of infatuation, not the fantasy of rescue, but the grounded, steady, soulful work of love that lasts. It's not easy, but it's worth it. A man who's done his integration work doesn't disappear when things get real. He doesn't run when emotions get messy. He knows the territory. He's walked through his own fear. He recognizes that intimacy isn't always smooth. It's raw, it's vulnerable, but it's sacred. He knows that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's strength. And presence isn't passive, it's powerful. And what about you? You deserve that kind of love. A love where you don't have to abandon yourself, where you're not begging for breadcrumbs of connection, where your presence doesn't scare someone away, but calls them forward. So what do you do now if you're in the middle of someone else's retreat? Start here, reclaim your center. You don't need to chase clarity from him, find clarity within. You don't need to prove your worth, know it. You don't need to fill the silence with explanations or apologies. Sit with the silence. Let it teach you. Ask yourself, what part of me still thinks I have to earn love? Where have I made someone else's emotional capacity more important than my own? Am I choosing partners who reflect back my wholeness or my wounds? These questions aren't about shame. They're about sovereignty, about stepping fully into the truth that your healing is your responsibility, just as his healing is his. You can offer love, you can offer space, but you cannot walk someone else's path for them. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to manage someone else's emotional process, when you stop shrinking to make yourself easier to love, you become more magnetic, more grounded, more clear. And the right person, someone capable of meeting you there, will feel that. Sometimes, the man who once ran returns. He's done some of the work. He sees you differently now, not as the projection of his anima, but as a real, whole woman. Other times he doesn't. He stays in the loop, avoidant, unavailable, still haunted by the parts of himself he refuses to face. And if that's the case, let him go. Not from anger, not from bitterness, but from deep, soul-level love for yourself. Because love is not about convincing someone to stay. It's about choosing someone who's capable of staying, who's ready to do the work, who doesn't just want intimacy, but is prepared for what intimacy demands. Carl Jung's work shows us that love isn't just a feeling. It's a mirror. It reflects back our deepest truths, our oldest wounds, and our greatest potential. Yes, love can be messy, but in that mess is the opportunity to become whole. If you're walking through the pain of someone's disappearance right now, know this: you are not crazy. You are not broken. You are not too much. You're awakening, and awakening often begins with heartbreak. Because it's in that rupture that the soul whispers, "Come home." Come home to yourself, to your truth, to your wholeness. Stop waiting for someone else to complete you. Start becoming the person who no longer abandons herself. That is the beginning of conscious love. Whether this particular relationship survives or not, the work you do now will change everything. It will change who you attract, what you tolerate, how you love, and most importantly, how you love yourself. So if you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for being brave enough to explore what most people run from. Thank you for turning pain into wisdom, and thank you for choosing the path of awakening, even when it hurts. If this video resonated with you, I'd love to have you as part of this community. Hit that subscribe button, share this with someone who needs it, and let me know in the comments what part of this message spoke to your soul today. You deserve love that doesn't ask you to shrink. You deserve a connection that meets you at your depth. And most of all, you deserve to never lose yourself in the process of loving someone else. Until next time, stay grounded, stay present, and above all, stay true to you.